Welcome to the Breaking 90 podcast, where we talk about all things sustainable fat loss. We take people on 90-day journeys to creating fat loss forever. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoy the episode.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Breaking 90 podcast. I'm your host, Alex Jerrika, here with my co-host, Jerrika Rydell. We are two of the coaches of Breaking 90 Fitness. Thanks for being here. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hey, Jer.
Alex. I was just laughing. I don't know why I thought it was funny, but pretty soon we're going to have to start saying my new last name. Here with my co-host, Jerrika Lilia. And that's a hard last name for a lot of people. People struggle with that last name.
Good point. I don't know if I'm ready for that. I'm going to have to do some practice runs.
It's okay. You got some time. Yeah, you got some time. I mean, if you have a French flair to it, you could say it French, but we'll practice.
We'll have like those really cheesy like voice dub overs that you see in like different language movies. It'll be like, here's my co-host Jerrika Lilia. Like
that'd be really funny. Oh God. Anyway, just started thinking about that.
Awesome. Coming up. What's going on in your world?
I recently invested in one of those hiking backpacks for the kid.
That you wear him?
Oh yeah, like the heavy duty ones, like the sun hat, the sunshade, everything. The kickstand. It's so sweet. It's so comfortable, so fun. We are in the trails. The dog's happy, mom's happy, baby's happy. We've been doing it every day. And I live, fortunately, very close to an amazing large set of trails. So it's pretty sweet. I'm loving it. It's nice and cool now, so the dog can actually like do stuff these mornings. So yeah, that's new in my world. It's been so fun.
And it like braces all the weight properly, so it's not like carrying an awkward backpack, right?
No, like you feel nothing on your shoulders. It's sitting kind of on your hips. I feel like my core is working. I'm actually getting a workout. It's pretty awesome.
That is awesome.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. How much does he weigh now?
It's probably just over 20.
Yeah. So how long can you use that till he's like how big?
Like my best friend just went hiking with her 4-year-old kid on it. So
that's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah. Like it was just a big hike and she just packed it, and when he's tired, she just throws him in. I mean, that would be a workout. But it's pretty cool. Yeah, they last a long time.
That's cool. Right on. Yeah. I'm happy for you because it's one thing I remember from when we were hiking with Emerson is like he was like 20 to 25 minute kilometers when he was really young. And so so like you're hiking through a trail and you're lucky to get a single kilometer done,
right?
And so it's great for the kid, and they're seeing nature and they're getting outside and they're exploring, like that's wonderful, but it's really hard for the parent to get the exercise.
Yeah, exactly. So at least if it's on your back, you just throw them in when they're okay, kid, it's enough time for you to and he loves it, like being up high like that. He's laughing and it's so sweet.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's fun.
Awesome. What do you got for us today?
I just want to touch on body composition. I think it's important to just kind of learn about, I guess, different ways we can measure it. What is it? And just kind of flow with that.
Cool. I like this a lot because so the easiest way for us to measure our body biometrics or changes is the bathroom scale. Unfortunately, the bathroom scale is one of the least accurate ways to measure our body changes, but it's the one that most people are like familiar with because it's like you step on the scale, you see the number, that's the measurement you have. Your scale measures body weight changes. Your weight can be water, muscle, fat, bone, organ. Our weight can be a whole number of things. The thing that changes the most drastically day by day is the water, not the fat or the muscle, which is what we're most interested in, the actual changes. So I'm not saying don't use the scale. I think it's a great data point, but it's inaccurate in measuring our body composition.
It's just one of the data points that we can use and we do use to make a bigger picture, but we don't rely on the data from just solely the scale.
Well, and then that brings us to another one, which is the BMI. And BMI is another one that's super readily used. The BMI is your weight and your height.
That's it. Yep. And all our doctors, it's still like in use in our health system, right? Our healthcare system. And for, you know what, for someone who may be, in the obese overweight range, it could be really beneficial to kind of be eye opening to be like, okay, because maybe your weight is a bit too high. It could be developing some health conditions long term. But for someone who is in more of the I do work out, I lift weights, I have a higher muscle mass. Doesn't take into consideration, one of the bigger things lately is all the racial and sex differences that people are noting in the problem with BMI as well, right? And having higher bone density and muscle density. So yes, it's a screening tool, and it can be used for overweight and obese people when they're struggling with their fat range at that point. But in reality, it's, again, not one of the most reliable tools.
Totally. And once again, I wouldn't tell you not to use it, but I would use it similar to the way you use your scale. It's a data point over time. Is my BMI changing positively or negatively based on my goals? If you're putting on a bunch of muscle mass, your BMI likely will get worse unless you're losing weight. So as we gain muscle mass, the BMI is only cross-referencing your height versus your weight. If I put on 5 pounds of muscle or 5 pounds of fat, my BMI won't reflect that any differently.
Right. And in reality, the BMI might be telling you you're heading in more of the negative direction, the way you don't want to go. So then you're getting advice that you're putting your heart at risk for more heart conditions when it's actually putting on muscle, and you're like, I'm actually making my heart healthier. So that's kind of where we have the issues when it comes to people who are trying to head in the positive direction and still using BMI.
Chances are, though, the people listening to this aren't putting on significant amount of muscle mass. Right. Chances are you might put on a little bit, like you might put on a pound or two, but where your BMI can become beneficial is looking at where you are now and then comparing progress over time. So even if you put on 1 to 2 pounds of muscle, you're probably going to lose more than 1 to 2 pounds of fat if you're listening to this podcast or you're following along with what we're doing. So chances are your BMI will still head in the right direction. What I don't want you overly concerned about is where the starting point of your BMI is. I want you more concerned with the direction that it's headed. Our BMI is probably going down if our goal is fat loss.
Perfect. Yeah. And then that kind of, I guess, another one we can talk about is the percent body fat, right? And this is a word or a tool that's become a big craze in the last 10 years or so, with all these scales that now have percent body fat showing up on the scales, and these bioelectrical impedance things that you stand on in body scans, and there's all these different types, and there's some that are much more accurate than others, but it's measuring the percentage of your body that's fat. So it takes your lean body mass divided by your fat-free mass, the difference in your total weight, your total body weight, and your total weight of fat.
Yeah, and so like I have one of these bathroom scales. Like they're not accurate, guys, but once again, it's another data point. You could take your body fat percentage on one of these scales every day or every couple days over a long period of time, and you could erase all the weird super high ones and all the weird super low ones and just look at the trend over time to see if your body fat percentage is going up or down. And that is a useful tool. But the day-to-days are not useful when you have that random spike and it's like, you've gained 2% body fat. Well, you didn't. It's just not true. It sends little electric waves basically that travel more or less freely through your body depending on your fat to muscle ratio, but also the amount of water you're retaining drastically changes how freely these waves can pass through. So if you're like on your menstrual cycle or sick or you had a high sodium meal, these waves change, and all of a sudden that scale is like, oh, your body fat percentage is much different than it was yesterday. It's just not the case.
Exactly. No, exactly. And you know what? The percent body fat, it is a very, I guess, important number if you have, if you're someone who has access to an MRI machine or a DEXA scan or, all these, but we don't. If you're listening to this, we don't have access to this. So we're looking for how many ways and different ways we can have data points in our journey, right? And this is just another one that we can kind of use as a tool.
Yeah, and there's different ways. Like you can get somebody who's decent with calipers. You can use the bathroom
Right.
scale. You can go to some gyms that have machines that are slightly more accurate than your bathroom scales. But all of them are just data points, and you need consistent data points. You should always be weighing on the same scale. You should always be measuring body fat in the same manner so that we can track trends over time. The thing that is a little bit easier is to just take body measurements,
I was
and
just
you
going to
can
say
be
that.
really consistent. We want to find landmark points on our body, like our belly button that isn't moving, and measure around the waist, around the belly button, so we know we're always hitting the same spot. And then over time, we can see if the inches are going down or up, right? We know that muscle takes up less space than fat. So if I trade a pound of fat for a pound of muscle and my body weight doesn't change, there's a good chance that that measurement is starting to get smaller as a result.
I think measurements are one of my absolute top and favorite
Agreed.
recommendations for our clients.
Agreed. But I also think there's value in using these other things as data points. I just don't think there's value in letting them control you. If you step on that bathroom scale and it's up 5 pounds, it doesn't mean you were good. It doesn't mean you were bad. It doesn't mean anything in between. It's just an extra data point. When we start comparing all of your weigh ins over time, all of your body measurements over time, all your body fat percentages over time, then they start to tell us a story.
You sit down and say, okay, what direction are these heading? Are two out of the three heading in the direction we want, but one's not? Okay, then let's look at the average here, right? We're not, like you said, letting them control us. We're just looking more long term, and yeah, they're super beneficial. And you don't have to do them all, right? We just listed a million different things. You don't need to do them all. Pick one or two, well, actually two or three, and make that sort of track it in some way, shape, or form.
Well, and there's two others that I think everybody should use, and the first one's progress pictures,
Yes.
and the second one is actually journaling your health and fitness progress. So the fact that I can move better, I can lift more, I can lift more repetitions, I can climb the stairs without pain now, I can carry my groceries from the grocery store to the car without having to take a break. Like, these units of measurement are actually very useful. They're things that your bathroom scale or your body measurements are never going to tell you, right? The progress pictures, though, is a great one because it will often, when the scale's being a little asshole and it's not moving the way you want it to, the progress pictures will often tell you a different story, because you'll be like, oh yeah, I can see the difference in my shoulders now. I can see the fat coming off around that spare tire region now. I can see those changes. Once again, you might not from picture to picture, but when you start comparing 3, 4, 5, 6 pictures and you get a trend of data, you can start to see these changes.
Awesome. And when you were talking about journaling, and I call it like feedback measures, right? Like, I want you to sit back and be like, okay, how's my energy level today? And you can honestly put it on a 1 to 10 or 1 to 5 and actually start measuring it. So if you're seeing, energy's probably just going to fluctuate depending on your month, especially for the women listening. But there's energy, there's sleep. How's my breathing during my workouts? Maybe I was so out of breath. Maybe my heart rate was maxing out, and now my heart rate, I'm taking way shorter breaks, and I have to push way harder to get higher. That's a measurement of showing that your body is changing, right? Even your skin, right? Is your skin changing? Are you seeing less tired eyes and breakouts, discomfort in your joints? Like, these are all, you don't have to do them all, but pick some that stand out to you and track them. And it could be as simple as 1 to 10. give it a value. And then 3 months from now, we look back and say, are we heading in the right direction? Are my knees not as sore because I'm strengthening them now? Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Right. That's just one of my favorite like conversations that I love to have with our members.
Love that. Love that. And all of those value points are way more beneficial than any other value point you're going to measure. Now, since we are here talking about body composition, though, I mean, what our body composition is basically is our makeup of fat to muscle. Like what percentage of us is fat, what percentage of us is muscle. This is something that we should all strive to have in an optimal range. But what is that optimal range? It's very, very wide. There's a very wide range of what's considered healthy. And so then it really comes down to personal preference. Once we get into the healthy range, it comes down to personal preference. And there's nothing wrong with being at the high end of the healthy range or the low end of the healthy range. What isn't great is being widely outside of those two ranges. If we're too lean, it's not good for us for extended periods of time. If we're too high on the body fat scale, then that's not good for us, obviously, which we know and understand. And it's the reason that we're probably here listening to this. So, I mean, if we want to get like into the numbers, like typically a healthy female body fat percentage range is like 18 to 28%. But the number isn't really that relevant. We want to look at where we're at now. No, all of these other factors. Am I moving the way that I want to? Am I living the way that I want to? Do I feel good? Do I look good? Am I happy with all of this? We want to move into that healthy range, and we want to find how we can exist in that world, plus or minus kind of 2 or 3% body fat, right? Because you can go to the low end, and a lot of people like to go to the low end of the healthy range before trips, before weddings, before the summer, things like that. But it's a little bit harder to exist there. You have to live with some more restrictions. It's harder to fit in alcohol and parties and social events and pizza. It's harder to fit in all of that stuff on the low end of the healthy range. Within reason, it's not that hard to fit that stuff in on the high end of the healthy range. So it's okay to waffle back and forth within there based off of the time of year, but we have to establish that norm first to determine what that looks like, because it's very hard for our body to have massive ups and down swings over time.
So glad you touched on that, even listed the percentages, because it's a good reminder that if you're listening and you hit 30 or 29% on your scale, but you're like, hey, I love my progress pictures. I love the way I feel. My energy is high. I'm enjoying myself. So what then? Like, what does it? If you're doing well at 29%, this is where we talk about the all or nothing mindset. You don't need to completely give up everything in your life to get into 28. Like that 1% is not going to all of a sudden you're healthy, all of a sudden you're not healthy. If your numbers, if your doctor are showing up good, you're exercising and eating good nutrients, but still enjoying yourself, then that's awesome. And we're not here to tell you otherwise. But it's when there are signs showing that we need to head into that healthier range, or like we talked about, heading in that trend in the direction that's most important for you. That's kind of what we're talking about. We want to move in the direction. Don't worry so much about the fine details.
Well, and one last point here before we wrap this up. When we look at things like that inaccurate bathroom scale that we talked about earlier, it may be telling you consistently you're 29%. You might be 19%. Like these things are super, super inaccurate. Where they're beneficial is for telling us what direction we're trending. So if it's like 29, 29, 29, 29, 28, 28, 28, 28, 28, and over time you saw that you dropped a percent body fat, chances are your body fat percentage is going down, but you're probably not actually 28. Like that, those things are probably like plus or minus 5 to 10% accuracy. So don't worry about what the actual number tells you. Just track the trend over time of is it going up or is it going down?
Yeah, great point.
Cool. So we gave you guys kind of the brief overview of body composition. I mean, I don't think there's a ton of value in going deeper into this journey, but I think it's something to consider, and how we are tracking and how we're measuring that. And just for your own curiosity, go on Google and look at what does 18% body fat look like for a woman? What does 25% body fat look like for a woman? You're going to notice very different pictures, all falling within a 25% body fat range. And that's okay too. Not every 25% body fat is going to look the same, but it'll give you, that alone, I find, gives you a better reference where you're like, oh yeah, I'm kind of between this and this. That's a more accurate reference to me than what the bathroom scale will tell us.
Yeah, awesome. That's a great advice.
All right.
I want to leave them with another tip because it just made me think. Like, we're talking body composition, and this just came up in my personal life, so I thought I'd remind everybody else. Um, that reminder, that tip for your routine checkup, and this is not just with your doctor. This is also with your dentist. And I think that the information coming out more and more in the last few years about how oral health is so important and plays such a large factor in our overall health. So my tip is just to remind you not just to see your family doctor or your nurse practitioner or your naturopath, but also to see your dental hygienist or your dentist.
I got to put in the mental health plug too, then, because we also need to do this with our mental health team, and that looks different from person to person. But I promise you, it's easier to have that checkup from the neck up done when you're in a healthy, comfortable state, so that your norm is established before you need help. It's really, really hard for a psychologist or a mental health worker to help you after you're already struggling. But if they've had these connections with you and you've had these checkups over time, they know what your baseline is. They know what we're trying to get back to. They know what we're working with. So use your health team.
Awesome.
Great. Well, thanks guys for listening. I hope you got some value from this episode. Wherever you are listening, take a screenshot, share it to Instagram, tag at Breaking 90 Fitness so that we know where you're listening. And we appreciate you being here with us. We look forward to having you on the next episode.